Hello again. I thought it worth drawing attention to something very, very disturbing which happened in England a few days ago. American viewers might not be aware of the background to this event, so I'll briefly run over what happened in the summer, just so that they know what brought about this latest development. David Starkey is a very well known British historian. He's written a number of books, he's often spoken on the radio and appeared on television. He's produced documentaries and he's been a regular on a panel show called Question Time. His, how can we put it, somewhat abrasive behaviour and attitudes have led to his being dubbed the rudest man in Britain. Most academics in Britain, including historians, put on a left-wing, anti-racist, pro-European front, whatever their real beliefs might be on these subjects. It's politic to do so if you work in a university or mix with Guardian readers and so on. Starkey, though, is a conservative. He's was in favour of Britain leaving the European Union, and he's made various controversial comments about race relations in Britain. After some particularly vicious rioting in 2011, when a black gangster died, precipitated a lot of trouble in black communities, he remarked quite correctly that a lot of white youths now adopt some of the less attractive traits of black British culture, including, of course, speaking in the bastardised version of Jamaican patois. This, incidentally, is perfectly true. I live in Essex, which is about 99% white, and an awful lot of the young men try and use broken English, or patois as it's more politely called. You'll often hear them saying, "I'm going yard," rather than I'm heading towards my home. I can't help laughing at it. They dress in the same way as well, with their trousers hanging down and their backsides hanging out. It's a particular thing. Anyway, after David Starkey said that, there was a terrible outcry and he was inevitably denounced as a racist. This then is the background to David Starkey for those who are unfamiliar with him. In early 2020, a young man who I suppose would best be described as a right-wing commentator decided to make some podcasts. Darren Grimes, he's very young, he's the same age as my daughter. He was involved in the campaign for Britain to leave Europe, and so both he and Starkey were already really unpopular with progressive, liberal and left-wing types. In July, Grimes interviewed Starkey, and David Starkey said something enormously stupid, so stupid that I'm surprised. He's a very intelligent man. I can't imagine why he said this. When asked if the transatlantic slave trade could be regarded as genocide, he replied, "Slavery was not genocide, otherwise there wouldn't be so many damn blacks in Africa or in Britain, would there?" It really is a breathtakingly idiotic thing for an historian to say. I cannot for the life of me imagine what caused someone like David Starkey to express such a view. Perhaps he was drunk, I don't know. A moment's thought will tell you that the fact that there are many Jews in London, in New York and Jerusalem doesn't mean that the Holocaust was not organised genocide. No attempted genocide has ever been undertaken with complete success. So the fact that there's many survivors either from the Turkish genocide of the Armenians or the Serbian genocide of the Bosniaks or the Nazi genocide of the Jews doesn't mean these events are not genocide. Still, there it is. That's what was said. And the reaction was predictable and swift. Starkey was dropped by his publisher. He had a few more books due out, including the second volume of his autobiography. HarperCollins have ditched that. Personally, I don't think he'll find it at all easy to get a new publisher now. He's blotted his copybook in no uncertain way. He had honorary degrees from certain universities. They've all been withdrawn. He's been forced to resign from all sorts of organisations, including a museum. He's become a non-person. It's all very unfortunate, of course, but he must surely have expected it after saying something like that. Anyway, this was in early July. The sequel came a few days ago. Starkey has apparently been punished enough, or presumably the establishment feel that he might have learnt his lesson, but they're determined to prevent anything like that ever happening again. The man who interviewed him has now been summoned to attend a police station to be interviewed under caution, as he's suspected of committing a public order offence, of stirring up racial hatred. This is, or should be, literally incredible. An interviewer asked a question, and that in itself is now being considered a criminal offence, to ask a question of an historian. I mean, let's just consider what's happened here. A journalist has asked a famous historian his opinion on an historical event. Because the opinion that was given ran counter to what is felt to be the accepted view of history today, the police are threatening to prosecute the journalist simply for asking the question. Just stop for a moment to consider that point. I mean, speaking purely personally, in the first place, I believe that anybody should be free to say almost anything at all, provided that it's not a direct incitement of violence or likely to cause physical harm. The classic case of the limit to free speech is that it doesn't extend to the extent of shouting fire in a crowded theatre. I can't try and rally a crowd to attack somebody or destroy things without breaking the law. Having said that, the police do seem to turn a blind eye to this lately. Some countries have laws against denying the Holocaust, which I personally find outrageous. I've little use at all for those who pretend that millions of Jews were not killed during the Second World War, but they should be able to voice that view without anybody stopping them. The same freedom should extend to discussing slavery, but it apparently does not. I'm irresistibly reminded of what St. Augustine, the theologian, said, which was that we should regard truth as a lion, that once it's set free, it's perfectly capable of defending itself. If people tell a lot of silly stories, we can generally depend upon the truth catching up with them and exposing those lies. So I don't think anybody should be prosecuted for saying things which are foolish, ill-considered or untrue. The most dreadful part of the affair is that the police are trying to stop journalists even asking the wrong questions about black history by claiming that doing so is likely to be a threat to public order. Judging by the disgraceful way in which crowds motivated by the Black Lives Matter movement in the summer were allowed to run riot, they may be right, but my personal view is they'd be better occupied bringing order back to the streets rather than trying to threaten peaceful journalists interviewing respected historians. But there, I dare say that their priorities are dictated to them politically these days by the idiots running the country. If this is allowed to continue, then we might as well give up entirely on free speech. I have myself been interviewed by magazines and newspapers in the past. Imagine if I expressed the wrong opinion politically, something quite likely to happen when people ask me questions. The next thing you know, the reporter is being summoned to the police station and accused of a public order offence. People really do need to keep a very sharp eye on this latest trend.